So here we are again, our third. I'm super excited about our third Antioch Homeless Coalition meeting. Um, if you've seen the last two meetings, you know why I was smiling in the beginning because I always say I'm super excited, but I am super excited once again to have our third our coalition meeting. This should be a very interesting meeting. I was really looking forward to this, like the first meeting I wanted to talk about these topics, but so here we are. I guess I'll go over some introductions. So we have myself, I'm Nicole Gardner with Facing Homelessness. We have Lacey Brown with JAR, and we have Mariah Williams with This Active Art. And another of our coalition members, Andrew Becker with Here Today, Home Tomorrow. He may hop on. He did have some things going on, but he may hop on if he has time to come on. But we have a special guest. If you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mike Kitterman. I'm from American Citizens Institute, and I'm based here in Antioch, and we haven't been doing too much with the homeless lately here in Antioch, but we've got some. We just accomplished some milestones in the Mission District in San Francisco, where we just installed. I don't know how many, but some washing stations for the homeless. And also we got approved to be distributors for I can't think of the name of it right now. The drug that helps people, or the little thing that helps people. Yes, to distribute it to the nonprofits in the San Francisco area. So yeah, so we just did that, but I wanted to come to this meeting anyways. Nicole invited me, and I wanted to just kind of get updated on the situation here in Antioch.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. I've met Mike a few years back, and very, very knowledgeable and just a cool dude. So I'm so happy that you were able to jump on with us today. Okay, so I want to just, thank everybody for being here. The meeting, we were hoping not to go over an hour. That's the goal. We will be going over some, I think, Mariah, with the city, county, and community updates.
Sorry about that. Okay, so the updates are going to be on a link. When the video is posted, you can click on the link and it will take you there. And I don't think there's anything coming up this week, but definitely check the link below.
Thank you, Mariah. And we did have Andrew giving some updates on the city, county, and community updates. He is not here, but we do have a link with the COC that with the county that goes over, all the different things that's going on. And this month is Homeless Awareness Month. I'm super juiced because this is my birthday month, and I'm just, it's Homeless Awareness Month. So I can't wait. I'm gonna be doing something. We're gonna be doing something this month. I know Facing Homelessness is going to be doing something this month, special for the in-house. Probably, closer to Thanksgiving and the holidays, but we should have an update before our next meeting for what we're going to be doing around that time. Can we go into our next, Lacey? I think it's 5.
Yes. First, I just wanted to say I'm really excited to have Mike on. You said that you haven't really done anything in Antioch, but you are so supportive of the organizations that are doing the work in Antioch, so that is doing something. Mike has been such a resource for me so many times and an asset for real. So
thank you.
Very appreciative of him.
Thank you.
Had to give that little shout out. But yeah, so word on the street, we don't have too much. As usual, we have sweeps downtown. There is another sweep that I wanted to talk about that is actually off of East 18th. I don't want to give the exact location because unfortunately that tends to get them targeted, but essentially what happened is there's a space separated by a fence. It's actually private property. It's not owned by the city, and there's no business currently operating on the property. But some of the unhoused had gathered there. As you know, it's been very, very rainy. We've had some crazy storms, very wet, very windy, very cold. And the city did come through and do a sweep, forcing the unhoused to actually go to the other side of the fence where it's almost completely flooded. Several of them are just in tents, completely unsheltered, not even in a vehicle. A couple of them do have vehicles, but ones that don't run. So that is a major issue. And something that Andrew actually pointed out is right on this same property. There's actually a business that is parking their vehicles illegally, using this space without permission from the city or anybody. They're just using this space because it's abandoned and there's nobody there. The city does not come and ticket these vehicles. They do not tow these vehicles. They don't bother these vehicles. I don't know if there's been any communication with the business owner, but we'll try to get more information on that. We're actually going to do a little experiment that we'll talk about soon. But they do bother the unhoused that are actually completely out of sight, by the way. Unless you're specifically like roaming on this property in between buildings, you cannot see them. And like I said, they're not interrupting any kind of business or anything like that. So it's really disappointing to see them being forced into even worse conditions, as if it's not already terrible to be outside in this weather. Something I also thought would go well in this segment is you may have seen, if you follow any of us on social media, you may have seen flyers circulating. One of our completely unsheltered, unhoused residents is currently pregnant, expecting a baby, and they are in need of some items. We did put a list of those together in that flyer. So if you, I mean, it's pretty much everywhere on all of our social media, so you should be able to find that easily. Something that we're really, really in need of right now is like a camping stove with extra propane. So if that's something that anyone has access to, that would be very helpful. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have right now. I don't have anything else specific to add to this segment today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lacey. I want to add that I know Andrew was downtown a few days ago and saw one of our friends on the streets getting, they were doing a sweep on her. And I was just so irritated because I just saw her last Wednesday, and I was meeting her to give her some food, and she was like, I'm over here. And I'm like, where? I just drove by. I didn't see you. And then I went back and I still didn't see her. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna come out right now. And so I got out and I gave her the food and stuff. But her encampment was like totally like, you would not be able to see it if you were driving by. Like it was like in the cuts. And I was like, oh, this is good. You know, you're like well hidden, like behind the trees or whatever. And you couldn't see it, but yet they still decided to go ahead and sweep her encampment. So that really sucked. So yeah, I just wanted to add that to that. If we don't have any more updates as far as any sweeps or notices or anything, we can just move on to the next topic, which is, or the first topic, which is the criminalization of homelessness in Antioch. The criminalization of homelessness refers to policies, laws, and local ordinances that make it illegal, difficult, or impossible for unsheltered people to engage in the normal everyday activities that most people carry out on a daily basis, or in activities that make them or help make them safe. So what policies, kind of want to discuss what policies or ordinances do we have in place in Antioch that criminalize homelessness? Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I know that I don't know the local ordinance that Antioch's using. I know that it's on that flyer that they usually post prior to, I don't know if they're still even doing that, prior to doing a sweep. They'll post a flyer and it has the ordinance on there, I believe. But I checked just before this meeting, I checked the city of Antioch's website where they do have all their ordinances listed, and I couldn't really find it, you know, but I know they do also use a California penal code, which is 647E, which by the way, you know, the state legislators have ruled that law to be unconstitutional, you know. So I don't know why they're still using it, really.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else?
Well, I know, well, one of the laws of, you know, using the rest. What?
I'm so sorry. Lacey has her little hands up and I'm like waiting for a hand. She has her little hands up. Okay, go Mariah.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Lacey. No, Lacey first. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mariah, then we'll take Lacey.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm used to teaching where like I just talk over the students, you know, on Zoom. I was gonna say something that I always think about is like, since they took the porta potties away in downtown Antioch, like, why is it like indecency in public can get you on a list, right, and have a blue dot by your name for your whole life for going to the bathroom in public? Like, not that people go in public, but like go behind a tree and they cut down the trees, and like, where do they expect people to go to the bathroom? Like, that's, to me, that seems so inhumane to make that a law, and I think it really targets people living on the streets. So, after you, Lacey.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of the same things that we see used over and over. Pitching a tent in public, being in certain places after sundown is illegal in Antioch. Things like towing a vehicle that's unregistered, but then they're not offering any assistance, even referring them to actual county resources that can help them with the registration of their vehicle. They're not even referring them. And, you know, there are abandoned vehicles all over that get reported to See Click Fix, which, if you don't know what that is, it's like a app that Antioch utilizes for residents to report different things to code enforcement, and then they can kind of keep updates on their response to it. But unhoused residents are disproportionately targeted with towing unregistered vehicles. And then specifically, something that I tried to get answers from APD about was when the engagement team, for example, goes to tow an RV, or they do a sweep of an encampment with RVs, and those RVs are taken, they can actually do something called like submitting it with a junk slip to any of the impound and tow yards that they use. They kind of do a rotating schedule with different tow yards in the city. And if the officer, which usually is Officer Tom Lenderman, submits this RV to the yard with a slip that calls it junk, which to my knowledge means that they have determined that the fair market value is $500 or less, then this actually expedites the demolition schedule for that RV. So that gives, with most yards, it's 30 to 31 days regularly that they have to come up with the money to get their RV back and out of impound. The cost goes up every single day that it's there, and it's not something that can be haggled or negotiated whatsoever, because the taxpayers pay it up front through the city. So when an officer submits something with a junk slip, instead of 30 to 31 days, it can bring it down to 14 to 16 days that they have. So it's cutting that time that they have to get their only shelter back in half. And so a lot of times we as advocates are trying to help them come up with money to get their RV out of impound. And we have a very limited amount of time because the officers have submitted it with this junk slip. I called APD trying to get answers about, one, how the value is determined, like how are they coming up with the fair market value of this vehicle, and number two, what qualification does do any of these officers have
Right.
to make that determination about the value of a vehicle? I was told at first that they had no idea what I was talking about. And then I was told that it's probably Kelley Blue Book or something. And I don't know if you've ever used Kelley Blue Book, but you need a lot of specific information, and especially about an RV. I feel like it's going to be near impossible for a 30-second, up and down look of an RV to enter the proper information to get an accurate fair market value number on it. And I talked to the manager at 2 of the tow yards that the city uses, and they said that this is used very frequently when the RVs of the unhoused are taken to their yard. And some of them are sympathetic and some of them are not. There are certain yards that are more willing to work with us and some that are not. But that's another way that Antioch, I think, is doing things by the book and using, a tool that is legal for them to use, but using it to disproportionately target unhoused residents and make it harder for them to get their property back.
I agree. Thank you, Lacey. I just wanted to jump in and just say, with these 24 and 48-hour notices, oh God. I mean, I reached out to city staff about a week ago. I talked to some people and was basically letting them know, because once it started getting cold and rainy, and then I feel a certain type of way. Like, come on, I know that they're not. This is not new to them to get these notices and things like that. But when it's raining and cold, and it's like you said, Lacey, when we go out and we give them donations and we get these donations, collect everything, go out there, and then they're just out there every few days just taking everything from them. It makes it really hard for the advocates to come up with this stuff and to replace the stuff that they need. So basically my discussion with some folks with the city was basically like, when I talk to code enforcement, the unhoused and advocates don't believe that, number one, it's based on community complaints, because that's the first thing that people will say. That's the first thing that the council has told me, mayor has told me, city staff has said. It's based on community complaints. That's what it is. And so when advocates, that we don't feel that way, and the unhoused don't feel that way, and we feel as though it's just harassment. You know what I mean? And so my concern was that when I talked to the code enforcement, that they don't even keep records of the complaints. So when you have people like us who are saying, this is harassment, and people are just like Lenderman, which I know we have another topic on that, but are just coming out and harassing people. Like, there's no way that we can just go back and say, oh, okay, well, it says that this complaint was a community member complained about this area around this time, and then we can kind of go and say, okay, well, that's why the officer was out there. So there's no accountability. We can't even really hold these folks accountable because there's no record. So I brought that up to some city staff, and they said that they would look into the process. It was difficult for me to get the records on it. So they said they would look into the process to see what they can come up with as far as the process. Another thing was that I thought it's just excessive. These 24-hour notices, are they keeping track of like who they're giving them to, how many times they're giving it to them? Because it is a violation of their civil rights for them to have to move when we don't have anywhere for them to go. Another important thing, Mariah, like you mentioned with the porta potties and stuff, like how are you getting tickets for indecent exposure when you don't have a freaking porta potty anywhere in the city? So that's just some things that I had brought up to some folks last week when I had a conversation with them. They did say that they would look into getting the porta potties again, and I know they said that they did have issues with them being damaged and stuff like that, and I get that, you know what I mean, but I guess that's another topic with the ambassador program and having the unhoused kind of police themselves, but that's another topic. But just the solutions, whether you lock it up at night or whatever, people need these things, because you can't just be giving people tickets for things like using the bathroom and you ain't got nowhere for them to go. So that was just a couple of things. And of course, with the city ordinance, as far as the no camping ordinance or whatever, that's just, you know, another way for them to criminalize homelessness. Giving tickets with the like giving tickets for I think I want to bring that later on to the Lenderman part. So I'll wait on that. Anything else? Right.
So bringing up what Lacey talked about, how you said the tow trucks, like the towing was paid for by taxes. It'd be, right, like the taxpayers pay for the tow trucks to come out and tow vehicles. Right. So it'd be kind of interesting to get like a layout of that and see how much money that adds up to, and compare that to how much it would cost to do a homeless shelter or something like that. Like have, you know, like it's side by side, and because that's gotta, you know, cost a lot of money by itself, just doing that all the time. I'm put my hand down now.
Thank you, Mariah. Lacey?
Yeah, that I totally agree. This was something that I inquired about when I was making a presentation for like a theoretical like proposal for a long-term solution for homelessness. And I was told that there was really no way for them to determine or separate like how many towed vehicles were actually belong to unhoused residents, how many that were impounded, you know, belong to unhoused residents, and that basically it was going to be near impossible to really like track down those numbers. But I think that we could maybe get more creative with the way that we ask those questions to try to get some answers. Um, Possibly even going directly to the tow yards. I don't know what kind of records they keep, and I'm sure it's different for each one. But you know, what percentage of, you know, what percentage of tows are submitted with a junk slip? What percentage of vehicles that come through here actually get demolished versus get, you know, reclaimed by the owners? Maybe some information like that, or maybe even just like what percentage of your business comes from the city of Antioch and, you know, code enforcement or the police submitting these vehicles as they're towed.
Yeah, because there's a difference of like repossessions versus, you know, city tows. You know, like the papers, I'm sure are different. Everything that's great. Yeah, it's really cool that you've done that before too. I checked it out.
Mike, you have anything?
Well, on that subject, you know, I think that, you know, what happens to the vehicle, you know, after the police are done with it, you know, that's something that would, you know, need to be, you know, coordinated by the interested parties. But the police should have information on impounded vehicles. I mean, of course they do. You know, whether they're willing to share that or not, you know, is a different story. And whether they're going to tell us that they have that information is a different story. But they do have that information. It's there, you know. And I mean, it should be made available to be subpoenaed, you know, if need be, or so it's got to be there. And it would be interesting to look into that and maybe even do a Public Records Act or whatever it was, you know, where we got to, you know, we're supposed to have a right to that certain information. We should look into that and try to get some information from the Antioch police on how many they've deemed to be, I don't know what it's called, you know, under the $500 value, and get some information there. And then that should be available to us right now.
I agree. Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to jump in real quick and say too, I think another good idea would be to kind of like how you guys were talking about with the towing, but even just with the sweeps, to try to figure out the kind of what the costs are for some of these sweeps. And I think this would be good for community members too, because their tax dollars go, you know, our tax dollars go to the abatement teams, code enforcement, all that, when they're doing these huge sweeps, and try to figure out how much they're spending on these sweeps versus how much they're spending, how much they could be spending, or how much money could be going towards housing instead. So instead of doing these, and I was talking to Andrew about this the other day, instead of doing these sweeps that could cost, you know, thousands of dollars, following our girl Sheila downtown every few days, or even our other unhoused friends down there every few days, and paying them and doing all that, kind of like getting an estimate to see, okay, well, this is how much it is to do this. Would you rather do this, or would you rather, and this is how much it costs to actually house somebody in like low income housing or whatever, you know, but just doing some research like that and bringing it back to the community so that they can, like, you know, at least say, well, your money is going to Sheila anyway. It doesn't matter if she on the streets or if she in a house. Me personally, I would prefer her being in a house, and it might be cheaper. So let's just, you know, try to just come up with these numbers. So I think that's a great idea as far as time, but I also think we should also look into the homeless sweeps that they're doing out here as well. Lacey, it looked like your hand up.
Yeah, I agree. In addition to trying to get some accurate numbers, something that I kind of wanted to bring up is something that was done in LA County. And I just pulled it up here so that I don't improperly quote anything. It's really brief, but in an article by the Los Angeles Times, they're talking about there was kind of a back and forth in regard to towing vehicles and RVs that are actually used as a dwelling. And basically a local ordinance was going against constitutional law. And so it was like they were trying to determine, are we allowed to have this local ordinance? And a judge actually determined that it was in violation of unhoused residents' constitutional rights. And so they amended it based on that. So basically there was a lawsuit filed. They were representing a woman who lives in an RV. A 1986 law allowing the city to designate streets where large vehicles cannot be parked overnight actually violates the homeless people's rights under the 8th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. The city countered with a January memorandum in which the LA Department of Transportation said that they will not impound or tow a vehicle that is occupied, and that even when an occupant is not present, parking enforcement officers must make a dwelling assessment to determine if it is being used as a dwelling. They suspended the ticketing and towing of oversized vehicles, meaning RVs, as part of its coronavirus response. City Council resumed enforcement in October, but made an exception for occupied vehicles. And then let's see, there's a lot more. Maybe we can post the link to this article here that kind of goes into the more details about it, but I don't see why Antioch couldn't do something similar. I know that we were asking them to stop the sweeps based on a statewide moratorium on encampment sweeps during coronavirus, and the city refused, despite an executive order by Gavin Newsom talking specifically about a moratorium on sweeping and unhoused encampments during the coronavirus pandemic. The city of Antioch said, if we get a complaint, we are absolutely sweeping it. There's not going to be any moratorium. So my confidence in something like this being implemented is low, but it's doesn't mean that it's not worth bringing up.
I agree. And you know what, too, and like you said, what they do is, you know, even when we were bringing that up, especially when COVID first started, you know, and it was so scary too, because the unhoused, like, they didn't know what was going on. You know, of course we're scared, but they're scared too, because they like kind of out of the loop, and they're just like, hey, I thought you guys weren't supposed to be, you know, towing us or making us move or moving anything around, because, you know, people are like, you know, they don't have access to wash hands, sanitizer, stuff like that. So people were out there like really scared, like they're not even supposed to be moving us like this. But they would still make excuses, and code enforcement would still make excuses, coming around, looking in their area, seeing that they have, like I said, with the porta potties, no porta potties, but people can't use buckets. You know, I mean, how else are they going to? And they would say that it's a, what is it called? A hazardous hazardous waste or something like that. And so they just found any way. They just do whatever they can just to make it uncomfortable for the unhoused. And I just wish that our elected officials would really step up, because really, and a lot of you know, APD and folks have even said, like, it's your council members, you know, they straight up just like, well, you got to change the policies because this is what we're told to do. So this is what we're going to do. And we're going to implement this because, you know, until they change these ordinances and laws, then this is what we're going to do. And so, you know, it's really bad. And then I have some more to say about that on the third topic that we're going to be talking about later. So, Lacey.
Yeah, sorry. I know I keep like adding things, but that reminded me that, you know, community members watching this, I'm sure they really identify with like, you know, well, of course they have to do something if people are using buckets to go to the bathroom, or there's environmental hazards, health hazards, you know, things like that. But I also wanted to point out that we offered, as nonprofits, on a volunteer basis, to actually set up a program where, like, at least twice a week we would go out to these encampments, and if the city provided porta potties and dumpsters, we would make sure we would basically, we asked for like a list of the potential hazards that they are required to sweep. Like if they get a complaint about a health hazard or an environmental hazard, they're required to respond to it. So if it's like batteries on the ground, or, you know, propane or a fire hazard, or, you know, whatever it is, we would have a list of those and go through and help the people in the encampments, you know, get rid of these hazards. We offered to clean up the porta potties twice a week, to fill up the dumpsters twice a week, so there was not any collection of garbage. And we were told no, straight up, we were told no, because that would be a managed encampment, and that they didn't want that in Antioch. So the city providing a dumpster and a porta potty, and nonprofit organizations completely volunteer going out and making sure that there were no environmental, fire, or health hazards on multiple times a week, was denied. So, you know, if you're someone that's watching this and you're saying, well, yeah, that makes sense. Like if there's all these hazards, they have to do something about it. We offered to do something about it, and we were told that they would not collaborate with us, because that would be basically the city of Antioch funding, you know, encampments, and that they can't do that. So.
Right. I don't want us to just keep going back and forth. I have something else to say, but anybody else want to say anything? Say anything else on that?
I just want to say, you know, that the city's policy, even aside from the fact that, you know, it's in violation of state law, it's there's nothing productive that comes with their policy. It's vindictive, and it's not it does nothing to help the solution. You know, when you put someone who's in a dire situation in even a deeper dire situation, that's not a solution, you know. And it's only it seems to me like it's only vindictive policy, you know. It's like to punish the homeless for being homeless, and it's just to me it's outrageous, actually, you know. It is.
Oh, yes, Mike, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And especially, like, you know, because there have been so many solutions that are ideas or volunteers, or, you know, when I was on the mayor's transition team, leading the mayor's transition team for the housing and homeless and mental illness, and oh God, I can't think.
Trafficking.
Human trafficking, thank you. And I was on that with even Monaco, or Councilmember Wilson, and you know, we brought these things to the table, like an ambassador program. And that's very similar, like Lacey, what you were saying. You know, we went out and spoke with the Unhoused, and Unhoused was like, yeah, and the ambassador program would basically look like, they have something like this in Richmond, and I just found out with Richmond, it's their what, I wrote it down somewhere. Safe, where is it? Safe, I can't remember what it is, but Richmond is doing a lot. And so, it's their what is it? Safe Organized Spaces program. So basically, and just like with the Downtown Streets program that's all around the Bay Area, so basically this ambassador program would be having different unhoused folks in different areas of the city work in their areas to keep their areas clean, work to keep these porta potties clean, work to or work with businesses to keep the business areas clean as well. And so basically, like what Richmond did was they gave so much money. I think it was $1 million or something to this safe organized spaces organization. And then they really helped their nonprofits out there too. But to this organization, and they have like safe parking. They're doing so much stuff. But then that money kind of trickled down and went to the unhoused, and they had about 20 people thus far that are being paid. I think it's $17 an hour full time to do the same thing, to keep these areas clean, keep our medium clean, keep our cities clean. And we bought that when I was on the transition team. We bought that to the council. Like, we wanted to have like this ambassador program. We can have different people, we can set everything up. And the unhoused, we talked to them and they were like, oh yeah, we definitely can do that. So, but they haven't come back with anything like that. So these different solutions that we're coming to them with and ideas, they're just not taking it into consideration for some reason. And like you say, it is like vindictive. Like, you have these different ordinances and things like that within the city, but you're not trying to do anything to help, like really help with the problem. And even that, the organizations, like they help them with, how end up helping them with housing and different things like that. So just imagine, and they said that even in Richmond, they said their goal is to have at least 60 unhoused folks with jobs, over the next year. So that's definitely something that Antioch can do. I just think it's really crazy that they have these ordinances and things like that in place, and they're just not trying to step up to do anything to help the unhoused. So that's just what I had to say on that. Anyone else? No? We good? Okay, great. So we are going to go into, we have a video. It's about 5 minutes of our friend Kenny on the streets. We just recently did an interview with him on the criminalization of homelessness, and just listening to his interactions that he's had with APD and code enforcement. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. If you guys can all put yourselves on mute, that'd be great, so we don't have anything in the background. Let's see if I can do this. All right, full screen. Share that, and I think I have it. Hey guys, so we are out here at downtown Antioch. We kind of want to talk to a few people. First of all, can you guys see that? Uh-oh. Can you guys see that? Good? Okay, great. Down here about the criminalization of homelessness, what their experiences have been with our police department, our code enforcement. Right now, right here, we have Kenny. He's gonna say a few things. So Kenny, everybody knows Kenny, but I'm gonna step out a little bit. But what have been some of your, even most, like, I know you've had some interviews before in the past about your experiences on the streets, but even as of the last year or so, or what have your experiences been with dealing with the with APD, with code enforcement here in Antioch?
I want to say it's a joke because it's serious. People are getting pushed around by code enforcement and the police, as I'm saying. Some of us don't know our rights, and that will come up under the Article 5, AB 5. And it's all about our civil rights. It's all about our civil rights. And we as homeless people need to read up on this. And we've been told, well, don't say nothing about it because then they will get forceful. Well, we need to know about it. We need everybody to know about this, not just us homeless, We get blamed for so many things. We get blamed for an awful lot of things that we really don't do. I admit that there's some things that we ourselves have to, police. But if you tell us out of sight, out of mind, and then you go and dig the place up, then Where else can we go? You're trying to push us out of town. It's not going to happen. These people, most of them are born and bred here. This is their home. You know, regardless of being on the streets, this is their home. Me, for example, I made it my home. 20 some odd years ago, I made it my home. But to be pushed around here, have nowhere else to go, my outer family that's all over USA don't know where to find me if I'm Oakley or if I'm somewhere else. You cannot stop us. You cannot stop us. We do this dance now every other day with a 48-hour notice. We have been complying with them. We're keeping our places up. I think a lot of it is the scam of, well, we got complaints. Who comes down here to the park at night complaining? You know, who gets up that early in the morning and complain? Either they're exercising or they're out here helping us and serving us. So we need more people like that. We need more people to understand what we're going through out here. To actually be talked about going to jail or something as far as sleep. This is not camping. Camping is when you take your family out and you cook outdoors and you sleep outdoors for a couple of days, you pack it up, you go home. That's camping. What we do out here is survival. This is not camping. The elements is killing us. I mean, already, I hate to say how many we lost. I can't count them right now, but I got two hands and they're full of us that have died out here. If it wasn't for COVID, they're ODing on this other drug, and we're just dying of natural causes too soon, way too soon for us to die of natural causes out here because we're freezing to death. You know, I don't understand this. You know, we're people too, and we shouldn't be treated like third-class citizens out here. You know, and this is to the public. Please try to understand that, you know, we're just like you. You know, we need a place to stay and stay warm. You know, and I'm sure nobody went to school and said, "What are you going to be for when you grow up?" I want to be homeless. I mean, what nut would say that? We got all walks of life here. Some people have PhDs, some have BAs. A lot of them I know have BAs. But what good is that doing us when we can't get a job? We don't have no place to stay. You know, it's kind of conducive to what they say they're doing, which is telling us a bunch of call your resources. We call resources and we get a machine. And if we don't get a machine, we get told that we don't qualify and that there's too many that are in the programs. You know, number one, get your elderly women and the elderly off these streets. This is nothing nice out here. We got a flux of new people that's coming in, a lot of them mental, and without their medicines and the elements that's out here, it's driving people to do things that they wouldn't do.
All right, so that was our friend Kenny downtown. Yeah, so it was hard to listen. He is I love Kenny. I've been knowing him for years. He's a really good guy, good speaker, and he is good at speaking out against and he's been doing it for years, been doing videos. He's like the OG downtown. So speaking out against the against what APD, his experiences with APD and code enforcement have been. So he had another video some years back after a sweep where he was, you know, and it just hasn't changed even over the years. I mean, you know, years later. So I think we're going to just jump right into, unless anybody has anything else to say on that, we can jump right into the next topic, Lacey.
Okay, so the next topic is the community engagement team. which if you don't know is the portion of the Antioch Police Department that interacts specifically with unhoused residents. It is usually made up of 2 officers specifically, and then code enforcement will tag along depending on what they're doing. It's kind of a difficult topic to discuss just because it starts to become political, and it just so many people, it's always going to be a he said she said when it comes to the unhoused interacting with the police. They do have body cameras now, which hopefully will be helpful either in making sure that they're not acting in a way that they shouldn't be, or proving that they are acting a way that they shouldn't be when they do. I will speak from personal experience only for now. I interact with Officer Tom Lenderman semi-frequently. He currently is like I don't think one officer is over the other. I think they've clarified that to me before. There's no like leading officer of the community engagement team. But he ends up being the person calling the shots when he's interacting with the unhoused. They're doing an encampment sweep, anything like that. Mind you, I've interacted with other officers that are part of the community engagement team and had pleasant interactions. I think just about anybody watching this knows that I'm notoriously not supportive of the police whatsoever, but when I'm out doing what I'm supposed to be doing, with my organization, and I'm helping my friends on the street, I'm not anti-police Lacey. I'm help my friend Lacey, and I'm doing whatever that I need to do to help them, just like everybody here on this meeting does as well. So sometimes that means having to have pleasant interactions with the police, and I'm fully capable of doing that. With Officer Tom Lenderman specifically, it's impossible to do that. And not only to advocates, but he speaks to unhoused residents like they are just nothing beneath him, like he enjoys their suffering, like he enjoys their pain. And I'm saying this because he will say things like, he'll laugh while people are crying, getting their only means of shelter being towed away. There was one of the unhoused residents driving up in a vehicle that actually didn't even belong to her, and he started to laugh and said, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you're driving a vehicle. Now I won't feel as bad when I tow your RV later. Ha ha ha." He's just he lacks compassion. He lacks emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. Of course, they're there to do their job. I'm not blaming an officer specifically for the job that they're sent there to do. They're sent there to enforce the law. They're sent there to clear an area, or whatever it is. The way that you conduct yourself while you're doing that is important, especially in that role specifically. And I think everybody here would agree that he does not conduct himself in a way that is helpful to anyone, even himself. Honestly, I think it makes his job a lot harder to be so aggressive, to be so disagreeable, to be so cruel to both unhoused residents and advocates that are there trying to help. I personally, so there was an encampment that was very tucked away, very hidden, that we got word of, and we started going out to feed people, to provide Narcan, to provide blankets, shoes, jackets, things like that. And so the residents that were in this encampment said that encampment had not been bothered by APD or code enforcement for over a year. They had been peacefully residing there. There was not a plethora of garbage. There was not a huge mess. There was not anything concerning going on for over a year. The day after we visited this encampment, APD came by and targeted this encampment and issued them notices that they had to leave. So this further prevents people from being willing to accept help, even from advocates, because then we are causing them to be targeted. And the reason that we are causing them to be targeted is because we don't get along with Officer Lenderman. He specifically just does not like us. The second that we show up on scene, he's immediately like, nope, stay away from me. I'm not going to talk to you. And so then, you know, when we show up and there are certain people that maybe don't know us there or haven't interacted with us on a personal level, they're going to be really hesitant to accept any assistance from us because they're worried that that's going to cause them to be targeted. And that is not the way, in my opinion, that a city should be working, because in my opinion, the advocates, especially the ones in this meeting here, and the community engagement team should be working together. I don't see the point in being at each other's throats all the time. I don't think it helps anybody. I feel like I'm kind of going on a tangent here because it's just like a particularly emotional like subject for me, but I'm past the point of believing that this officer specifically can be retrained or any of that into being good in this role. So for months, we have been asking for him to be removed from the engagement team. We're not asking for him to be demoted. We're not asking to take his job. We are asking that he be reassigned and that a different officer be assigned to the community engagement team. Like I said, I do have pleasant interactions with officers on the community engagement team because it is literally just a difference of their demeanor, their behavior, the words that they use, the respect that they use when talking to unhoused residents. The officer who was kind of in charge before, I thought was very compassionate. I saw that he cared about the people that he was interacting with. When we would go out to encampment sweeps, we don't go out to protest encampment sweeps. We go to help people move their belongings, to help people find a new place to go, to just see what we can do, make sure their rights are not being violated. Sure. We ask if they want us to document. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and we respect whatever they want. And so an officer on the community engagement team, in my opinion, should appreciate that we are trying to help move that along, especially if it's on private property. If they're trying to move people off of private property and advocates are showing up ready and willing to help unhoused residents move items, that's going to get them off of the property faster. And, you know, that gets the job done. Other officers are supportive of this when this happens, and Officer Lenderman is not. He says, you know, if you step foot on private property, I will arrest you for trespassing. I have videos of us saying we're literally just here to help them move their belongings. You're asking them to leave. You know, we're here to help them leave faster. And he says, you know, no, absolutely not. You'll be arrested for trespassing if you step foot over here. He will ticket us for anything that he possibly can. He'll go run our license plates, ticket us for expired tags, or, you know, something wrong with the vehicle. He'll threaten to ticket you for feeding people. He makes sly comments. The first time I ever met him, in fact, he made a joke about me getting hit by a car and how that would be such a tragedy, very sarcastically. And I had never met or interacted with him before in my life. And that was long before I was ever in the news notoriously against the police at all. He's just not a nice person. And so there is a petition to remove him from the community engagement team.
Lacey, can I interrupt you just real quick? Can we talk about, I think you're going to go into kind of solutions. Can we go into the solutions afterwards where we can kind of talk about, because I think that's when I wrote it down, the petition for Lenderman, right? Can we go into that like when we talk about solutions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we didn't have a lot, and I think Mike can add to some of those solutions as well. But anything else, Lacey?
I know that I probably have clearer examples and interactions with him that would prove what we're trying to say, and I know it's a very specific thing. If any of you guys want to add your opinions, interactions with him, any of that, that would be helpful, because I'm just kind of rambling here.
Mike, you have your hand up. Thanks, Lacey.
Yeah, you know, I'm not surprised. You know, I've never encountered Officer Lenderman, but I'm really not surprised that I'm hearing this about his personality, because, but I don't think his harm to this city is not just limited to his treatment of the homeless, because I have read his presentation to the city council that was a couple years ago, and everything that he presented to the city council, not one of the points that he made matched anything that that has been produced by the state legislator on studies done or about homelessness. For instance, you know, he has these ideas that the homeless are that way because of their personal choice, and a lot of them are come from out of the city to be here, and a lot of them would rather be in jail because it gives them, you know, something to eat and a roof over their head. All these false beliefs that he presented to the city council, and this information, you know, gets disseminated to the public, and it's harmful to any you know, any paths to solutions, you know, because you get the public believing these very narrow-minded, you know, beliefs that really are not based on any truth or fact or any, you know, studies the government's done. They're just and they become you know, more of us against them, you know, and it turns the residents, you know, to where the residents start to believe these things that Tom Lenderman has in his head that are just not based on truth or fact. You know, the fact is that, you know, people are unhoused because of the high cost of housing, because of the, you know, failure to secure jobs, and these facts that are, you know, issued in every study done, every report issued by the government, and none of those have anything that bears any similarity to what Tom Lenderman has to say, you know. So he's harmful to the city. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And I just want to point out real quick, that is just so important, and especially with him being an officer. I remember you saying something a little while back ago, Mike, about you looking at Lenderman when he was at a city councilman meeting, or you saw a transcript, whatever it was. And I was just like, wow. And that is just so true, because it just is so divisive to a city that's already really divided, and it just doesn't help at all. Mariah, you have anything, and then I'll jump in.
You know, actually, I feel like I had a flashback, because I'm pretty sure, so, you know, I used to work at Antioch Middle School, and in the morning I go to that Starbucks, you know, on 10th Street, the one that used to be by Grocery Outlet. And, you know, I used to buy coffee for a man that lived outside. He still lives there, but, and I met with the cop out there, just, you know, just said hi. And I said, you know, it's so sad there's so many homeless residents. And the cop said, well, you know, 99 of people with a mental illness is because of drugs. And that's why they're on the street, because of drugs. And I didn't want to argue, because I was like, I have to go teach. I have to go. But I wonder if that was him. But I don't remember the face, because it was before I knew anybody. It was 2017 or 18. But sorry, I just had like when he was talking, I was like, I wonder if that was him, because the misinformation, you know, and I think, you know, right now I'm teaching special ed in middle school, and I think all the time what's going to happen to these kids, or what's going to happen to the students that I've had who aren't special ed, but, you know, just especially, you know, people who don't have a family or who don't have money, and what's going to happen as rent goes up and people can't get, really great jobs that's going to cover, like, unless you're a doctor or have a two-family income, and it's incredibly hard to make it in the Bay Area. So I was thinking about a bunch of things when he was talking, and, personal experience with talking to police in Antioch, and then being, teacher and seeing the kids and seeing the family and thinking like, wow, like half these kids don't have a shot to even make it in this area. And just because of how expensive it is. So, yeah.
No, I agree, Mariah, and I think even like you said, I mean, we're talking about the community engagement team, but just officers in general, for them to have that and then push that out there to you, just being a community member, asking questions about the house or sparking up a conversation with them. It's just, it really sucks that they're giving out this wrong information. Last meeting, Lacey had some statistics for us. And I think that these police officers, before they open their mouth, they need to do their research. So just on the community engagement team. So I, just initially, I had reached out to, actually, can someone else, do you have anything? Because I have to go open the door for my husband, unfortunately, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can add, I'm sure that I know that we have people kind of on both sides of the fence that watch these meetings. And every time
Hold on, Lacey, I'm back. I've got a comment on this. I'm like, this is I got a comment on this. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so just real quick, and then I can jump back on later. But so yeah, just initially with this, I just wanted to say with this community engagement team, it was Summers who actually reached out to me. He and Lenderman were on the community engagement team some years ago. I think Summers probably just as of the year. I don't even know if he's still on there, but I know Lenderman rides around with another guy. It looked like he was kind of training the last time I saw him. But Summers was really cool. He was willing to. He went to a community meeting that we had. We had some community meetings in Oakley with advocates, nonprofits in Antioch, just all of the neighboring cities or whatever. And he came and he spoke to us, and he was really good. There was actually another, I think, coffee with the cops in at APD that they had, where that's how I really could tell, like, this is the beginning of everything, right? Like my advocacy and all that, showing up to these meetings. And Summers was talking about, well, Lenderman had started talking about, the parks, and then people were in the questions, like, well, asking questions, the community members asking questions, like, well, what if they're in our parks and this and that? And he's like, well, you can call us, and, and then Summers like jumped in and made it clear, like, it is not illegal, like, it has to be, between certain hours, and then he even jumped in and said, as far as feeding them, there was a new California state law or county law ordinance or something that was passed that it's not illegal for you guys for the community to feed the unhoused. So he was just so positive with it, and Lenderman was just so negative with it. And so that was like kind of my first interactions. But I just must say that initially when I was going out to these encampment suites, I did have to learn a lot, because I was the one that was going out and protesting against the sweeps themselves. Like, y'all don't need to be doing this. People have nowhere to go. This has to be illegal. I'm still learning. And so I was out there, frustrated and yelling at people like, what are y'all doing? And so eventually it took me some time to understand that, again, it is the city council who we need to work. That's why I became an advocate, like, okay, I need to talk to the council, because they have to change this stuff, right? Because really, in all honesty, for the most part, for the ones that are not harassing the unhoused, they are doing their jobs. And so I think that that's how I was at first. But then later, like Lacey said, I learned that, okay, well, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do these sweeps, and what I can offer is bags or food or help or other community members that can come and help these folks when they're devastated and are trying to move everything that they own. So even doing that, like you mentioned, like Lacey mentioned, that's been a problem for I want to say really Lenderman, where the even one time going out getting bags, whatever, like he just started, gave me a notice like, oh, and then I've provided donuts or something like that because I'm like, people are hungry, they're tired, whatever. And then he handed me a notice, oh, the county doesn't want, and this is like when COVID first started, the county doesn't want you serving food because the public, well, they also said that you're not supposed to really be doing these sweeps either, but y'all doing that. Like, so it's okay for them to do some things, but it's not okay for us to give them food, and it wasn't even food that I prepared, it was food that I just picked up. So they pick and choose, I think, and I keep saying they, but in all honesty, the unhoused have just really said that Lenderman, a guy told me downtown, younger guy told me that Lenderman is the only officer that makes him want to jump in front of a train. And I literally teared up like, wow, you want to jump in front of a train? Like that was just, I just could not believe that. And so what do we hear? It's we say code enforcement, and there may be some code enforcement, but when it really boils down to it, Lenderman, everywhere he goes, it's devastating. He's giving bad news. You have to move every 48 hours, giving people notices after notices. So it's like, I can really, I really can say that we're talking about the community engagement team, but in all honesty, and then with this new guy that just jumped on, I'll kind of go into a little bit later about my last experience with Lenderman. But I'm just afraid because of with this new guy jumping on and him training him, what kind of baby Lenderman are we going to get? Little Lenderman are we going to get because he's training him a certain way. So I have some more comments afterwards, but anybody else? Lacey?
I know Mariah had her hand up.
Oh, Mariah, I'm sorry to see.
Oh, that's okay. I put it in the chat so you could just say it if you want to. I remember Ruby, she was an unhoused resident that moved back home with her family, but she was terrified of Lenderman and she would have panic attacks about it. And not only was she elderly with like a hurt leg, but she was very scared whenever he'd come or any encampments would come.
I feel like we could probably go on for a long time giving anecdotes about Lenderman. I'd say the most recent one was an unhoused resident called me while he was preparing to tow her second RV after towing her first one and it getting demolished and her having to move in with someone else into their RV, and then this one was getting towed. She called me and she was hysterically sobbing, and she was COVID positive in the RV, and she was begging him to take the phone to talk to me. She handed the phone to her boyfriend, and I was trying to ask questions like, because she was very emotional, and so I was just trying to get information like, where is it being towed to? Can I get the information so that we can, work on getting it out of impound, blah, blah, blah. He refused to take the phone. And just the way that he was interacting with her while she was crying hysterically, he just doesn't care. I've heard unhoused residents ask him, like, what happened to your partner? What happened to the other officer? I want to talk to him because, they didn't have any issues with that officer. So it's not just a conflict of any cop that's in this position is going to butt heads with them, which I'm sure in some cases it's true. But, I don't think most of the time that they're being unreasonable. Another short anecdote I'll add is we were helping with a very large encampment sweep off of private property. We were threatened with arrest if we walked onto the property to help residents get their belongings. we went, sorry, my daughter. We went on the property anyway, because I was like, you're going to have to arrest me. I'm not, it was rainy. It was muddy. It was very cold. It was just, we were going to do it anyway. I was helping an older gentleman with his RV that wouldn't budge. It was a trailer that hooked up to his truck, and he couldn't get the trailer hitched to the truck, and they were threatening to tow it. So they had city funded tow trucks on site that they said they would not help anybody get their vehicles off of the property. Basically, if their tow truck touched it, it was getting impounded. And so we were trying to help him get his trailer. It took us probably at least an hour and a half to get it properly hitched. When we finally got it going, it got stuck in the mud because it was very muddy, and they had blocked the other exits off of the property. And the only exit off of the property was very, very muddy. And so I asked Lenderman if I paid for a private tow truck to come here to tow the vehicle, would they allow it onto the property? And he said no. So I don't know how this is helpful. I don't think that it makes any sense for an officer to refuse help from people that are offering it to get the same result that they want, which is for them to move. Because at the end of the day, they're there to do their job, and that's what they've been asked to do. So are we ready to transition into the discussion about solutions for this, or does anyone else have anything they want to add?
Yeah, just really quickly, I just wanted to just say, and then I think we have gone way over. So I do want to talk about the solutions, but I'm thinking that we may have to push that that last topic into our next meeting or a future meeting. So just really quickly, so I did have after about, I think it was like 2 sweeps in a week, I was really exhausted, and people, they're calling the advocates. I got phone calls and was like, you know what, I had to go out of my pajamas the second time, and I was like, oh my God, we can't keep doing this. Lenderman was downtown with the new officer on that engagement team, and I just walked up to him and was like, hey, like, we can't keep doing this. Like, seriously, there has to be something that we can do, because we just can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep coming out here like this, and then on top of that, because they need help. And the last minute, it's not good for advocates to have, you're trying to rush, you're trying to make phone calls to see who's where, who can, go to these encampments without much notice, because people literally wait until the code enforcement then come there in order to call. So anyway, I'm trying to make this short. So, I said, is there any way that maybe you guys can reach out to the advocates? I'll give you my number so that when you guys give these 48-hour notices, at least we'll know ahead of time, so we can try to help people, give them what they need to move, because we can't do this. He was like, okay. And we kind of talked a little bit, and he had some little smart stuff to say that I didn't really care for, but I was just thinking about the long-term making this work for us, right? So he agreed, and he said, yeah, I think, this was a great conversation, whatever. So coincidentally, the next day I had a meeting with City Manager Ron Burnell and the Unhoused Resident Coordinator. I was super excited, and they were excited that me and Lenderman actually were coming together to try to make some things happen. And so I left that meeting and got a phone call from somebody that was on the street. Rushed down to go see what was up with her, and it was off of Wilbur. And so what do I see? Lenderman there with the new guy officer. And he walks up, he's like, hey, Nicole, whatever. I'm like, hey, trying to be nice. But I'm talking to her, she's distraught, she's like devastated. She's like, because when she first initially called me, I told her, you don't have to go anywhere, you're registered, you don't have to go nowhere. So tell them you're not moving. So because she said that, like, he found other reasons, like he gave her a ticket for like her license plate it was on her in the inside of her window instead of on her plate. He threatened to arrest the husband, just a bunch of stuff. And during that moment, I was like, I can't work with you. Like, I can't even work with you because you're just evil. Like, you are it is so satisfying for you to make life miserable for the unhoused that I cannot. And he tried calling. My phone, or actually text my phone, my business line, and was like, "Oh, we have somebody here. I'm giving a 48-hour notice to, whatever." And I didn't even answer. It was just like, you know, that right there could have been something positive and a positive solution that we could have worked together. But I just couldn't do it. So if you want to go into solutions, Lacey, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If someone asserts, you know, that they know their rights, it's just an immediate, he has to assert his dominance in that situation. Or where's your little friend? Where's your little friends now? Is something that I hear he says a lot when we're not around. Okay, so solutions. I think that number one, fixing just the relationship between the engagement team and advocates and the unhoused is of top priority at this point, because then we can really start working together on more permanent solutions to these issues. And it feels like right now we're kind of running around putting out fires as they're being started, and we can start to be more proactive in figuring this out a little bit better. And that includes work on our end too. And what I was going to say before you came back, Nicole, is I understand that a lot of people watching this have seen videos of us just, I'll only speak for myself, videos of me just cussing Lenderman out because, you know, whatever's going on. But you have to understand that, you know, there's this long timeline of a relationship between, you know, advocates, unhoused residents, and Lenderman. And you're seeing this little portion here. And it is very frustrating when your friends are crying and their only means of shelter is being towed for the millionth time, and you know that you're not going to be able to raise the money to get it out, and they're crying and he's standing in the corner laughing. Yeah, eventually you're going to get very frustrated and you're going to start yelling and swearing in cases, for me at least, so the work is going to our end as well. And that's why we are saying this is a bridge that needs, a gap that needs to be bridged. It's not, you know, Antioch police, you need to fix this. It's us saying we need to come and meet in the middle somehow. So we currently have, you know, an interim chief. I don't know what the situation is going to be for a new chief, but right now he's what we have. Tony Moorfield, I've spoken to him once before about something unrelated, and I was able to have a somewhat productive conversation, I would say. I think that that's where it has to start, and we just have to sit down at one table and brainstorm ways that we can compromise on our end, ways that they can compromise on their end, because again, I just don't think this is effective at all. But to be completely honest, anything other than him being completely removed from the engagement team will not be satisfactory to me. I'm willing to make compromises on my end. Personally, I can only speak for myself, but there is not going to be any way, I don't think, for us to really make a difference with him in the position that he's currently in, just because his heart and his soul is just not the right fit for this position. I've seen a really dark, nasty side of him, as he has me. But I just, that's going to have to be a step for me, at least. So again, there's that petition that we've been circulating. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but I actually talked to a member of city council about this previously, because we had talked to APD and said, basically, you know, what is it going to take for this to happen, because we want Lenderman removed. And I kind of wanted someone with authority to ask that same question. And the response that we got back was there wasn't enough documented evidence of there being an issue with Lenderman. But what was being neglected in that conversation, I think, is the power dynamic between the police and unhoused residents, because they expect unhoused residents to make documented complaints that they can refer to. I understand that, but at the same time, they are completely exposed and at the mercy of this officer that they're complaining about, who has, Lenderman has the ability to target them and ruin their entire life in one day. And so going down to the police department or going online even and making a complaint about this officer is dangerous for them. It's terrifying. Some of them are very brave and willing to do that, and I commend them completely. I'm not saying that they're all scared or anything like that. I'm just saying that there is a power dynamic there. So I don't think that that's an accurate way to gauge dissatisfaction with Lenderman, because there is not going to be an accurate representation of that. So I would love to hear other people's opinions, because I'm a little bit at a loss for solutions. Otherwise, I feel like we'd have one by now.
Right, definitely. I just want to throw in. I'm just gonna, with as far as the complaints, because I've done at least 4 complaints on Lenderman myself, speaking on behalf of the unhoused, and it was I forget who it was when I went in to do the interview with him. He was trying to intimidate me, and I was like, hold up. Like, I can see why an unhoused, and I told him, I can see why a homeless person would not feel comfortable coming in here because of the way that you sitting over here talking to me. Luckily, I'm a strong woman and I can deal with it. You don't intimidate me, but I can understand how some folks on the streets would feel intimidated with you defending Lenderman when I'm telling you that he's doing this, and you're like, oh, well, maybe he was doing this, or this was his job, and it wasn't good. So, I was told by the city manager a little while ago that it was actually okay because I brought up the concerns with the unhoused not feeling comfortable coming in and doing these complaints. Some are comfortable, like you said, Lacey. Some are bold and have been bold and want to speak, but a lot of them don't. So he did say at one point, or tell me at one point, that it was okay for advocates to take these complaints by the unhoused or whatever, just to at least even just to have them on record, you know what I mean, and put the complaints in. So that's one thing that I think if there are people that are not willing to step up, that's something that we still can definitely do on their behalf, just so it can be on record. So anyone else? Nothing else? Ooh, we have gone over, y'all. Lenderman takes a whole hour to talk. I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, so yeah, I also agree with you too, Lacey, about the having advocates in the police department and our unhoused work together to try to come up with solutions. Again, I always throw in the council, but I think that we're definitely going to have to do something to make them kind of change these ordinances, because like I said, outside of the 2 officers on the community engagement team, we have a whole code enforcement and other officers that are following the laws that the city has put in place, and these ordinances that the city has put in place. I talked to Andrew about also doing monthly public records requests on the amount of notices and sweeps that they're doing. And we kind of went into that a little bit. And we kind of went into complaints. And I think also too, encouraging and which we do anyway, encouraging the unhoused to document whether it's auto recording or recording on their phones, as much as these interactions as possible, the ones that feel comfortable doing so. And we do that already. And then you talked about the petition. So I think that is it for that. So if it is okay with y'all, because we have gone way over, to bring the blight and illegal parking and blight by the unhoused to the city.
Okay.
If it's okay with you guys to go ahead and bring that to a future meeting, not necessarily next meeting, but it definitely is important for us to talk about. So if that's okay with y'all, we can do that at a future meeting. Everybody good? Yep. Okay, so closing, we're getting late. So our next meeting is going to be November 15th at 5 p.m. We will have community members will be participating in that meeting. Lacey, you want to give an update for this? Because I totally forgot about that. Go ahead with the update for hopefully our next meeting and what we're doing. To be a part of this discussion, though, please email us at AntiochHomelessCoalition@gmail.com to receive a participation form, and we will be reaching out to a lot of people who said that they do want to participate in future meetings. So go ahead, Lacey, please.
Yeah, thank you to those who have reached out. If you haven't gotten an exact meeting yet, we kind of have you on a list of people who are interested, and we'll definitely reach out. So topics for discussion for our next meeting is actually going to be further elaborating on one of the solutions that we talked about today, and that is bridging the gap in between advocates, unhoused residents, and the Antioch Police Department. I have personally invited Interim Chief Tony Moorfield to participate in the discussion. I'm hoping that he will join us and give his thoughts on ways that we can do that. So I'm not sure if he will be joining us, but he has been invited, so we're excited about that. It's really important, I think, for everybody to come to the same table, so that's something I'm really looking forward to. In addition, we're going to be talking about some harm reduction initiatives, possible additional harm reduction initiatives that we can implement in Antioch. Harm reduction is something that the people in my organization are really passionate about. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're already doing, what we're hoping to be doing. And then also we are going to be talking about different programs and or initiatives that are being used in other cities and ways that we could possibly implement something similar here in Antioch. So we're going to be reviewing, creative solutions that other cities in the area have come up with and are using now, how those are going, ways that we think that we can maybe take their lead and implement some of those things in Antioch.
Perfect. Thank you, Lacey. And thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. We really appreciate it, and would love for you to come back anytime. I just want to say lastly, is there anything that you can think of that you would like to see us talk about? We want the guests to kind of, give us an idea of what they want to hear or discuss, or what's important for you to, what would make you want to come back on and discuss.
Well, I think you guys are right on track, and just continue what you're doing would be very helpful, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you too, lovely ladies. Y'all have a good night. I think that is it. And yeah, 6:30, I'm hungry, so bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike.